Have you ever sat at the same table with people you love and felt something was missing? Not loud, not obvious, just quiet. A silence that doesn't come from peace, but from distance. Have you ever noticed how a family can be together every single day and still feel far apart? I didn't realize it at first because everything looked normal. We had dinner together every evening, at the same time, at the same table. My husband would come home from work, tired but present. My daughter would finish her homework quickly, efficiently, and I would prepare the meal, set the table, call everyone in. It was a routine, a good one, I thought, a sign of a healthy family. We sat down, plates in front of us, warm food, soft light above the table. Let's eat, I would say, and we would begin. The sound of spoons, the quiet movement of hands, occasional small questions. How was school? Good. How was work? Busy. Simple answers, short, complete. And then, silence again. At first, I didn't think much about it. Life is busy, people get tired, not every dinner needs to be full of conversation. That's what I told myself. But over time, I started to notice something. The silence was not relaxing, it was empty. No laughter, no stories, no real connection, just people eating and waiting to finish. One evening, I looked up from my plate and I saw something that made me pause. My daughter was not really there. She was sitting in front of me, holding her spoon, but her eyes were somewhere else, far away. Emma, I said softly. She looked up, a small reaction. Yes, Mom? Her voice was polite, normal, but something felt distant. What are you thinking about? I asked. She blinked slightly. Nothing, she said. Nothing. That word again. So easy, so common, but often not true. I smiled gently, nodded. Okay, I said, but inside, I wasn't convinced. Because I remembered something. When she was younger, she used to talk a lot about everything, her day, her friends, her thoughts, even the smallest things felt important to her, and she wanted to share them. But now, those words were gone, replaced by silence. That night, after dinner, I stayed at the table a little longer. The plates were still there, and the room still quiet, but my mind was not. A question kept returning, again and again. When did this change happen? When did our dinners become so quiet? And more importantly, why didn't I notice it sooner? The next evening, everything happened the same way again. Same time, same table, same routine. I placed the food carefully, called them in. They came, sat down. Let's eat, I said. And once again, the silence returned. But this time, I was listening to it, really listening. Not just hearing the absence of sound, but feeling the absence of connection. My husband was looking at his plate, eating slowly. My daughter was doing the same. No eye contact, no shared moments, just separate worlds in the same room. I took a small breath and decided to try something different. Let's not eat yet, I said suddenly. They both looked up, surprised. What do you mean? My husband asked. Just for a moment, I said gently. I want to ask something. They waited, curious, maybe a little confused. I looked at them, one by one. Then I asked a simple question. When was the last time we really talked? Silence. But this time, it was not the same silence. This one had weight. My husband leaned back slightly, thinking. I don't know, he said after a moment. Emma didn't say anything. She just looked down again, and that was my answer. We talk every day, my husband added. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. but not like before. He didn't respond immediately because he knew I was right. I turned to Emma. What about you? I asked softly. She hesitated, then spoke quietly. I don't have much to say. That sentence felt heavier than it should have because I knew it wasn't that she had nothing to say, it was that she had stopped trying to say it. And maybe we had stopped listening. I looked down at my hands, then back at them. And in that moment, I realized something simple but important. We were not losing time together. We were losing attention. And without attention, even love can become quiet. That night, something began to change. Not loudly, not dramatically, but gently. Like a small shift that you almost don't notice at first, but once you do, you can't ignore it anymore. The room stayed quiet, but not in the same way as before. This silence felt different. It was not empty. It was waiting, waiting for something to be said, waiting for someone to try. I looked at Emma again. She was still sitting there, hands resting near her plate, eyes lowered, not uncomfortable, not upset, just distant. I think we forgot something, I said softly. My husband looked at me, curious. What do you mean? He asked. I paused for a moment, trying to find the right words. I think we forgot how to talk to each other, I said. The sentence felt simple, but it carried more meaning than I expected. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at the table, thinking. Emma shifted slightly in her chair, a small movement, but I noticed it. What do you want to talk about? She asked quietly. That question was not resistance. It was uncertainty, like she had forgotten how these moments used to feel. I smiled gently. Anything, I said. Something from your day, something small. She hesitated, then gave the same answer as before. It was normal. Normal. Another safe word. Another closed door. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. Then I tried something different. Can you tell me one small thing that happened today? I asked. Just one. She looked at me, then at her hands, thinking. Real thinking, not avoiding. After a few seconds, she spoke. There was a girl in my class, she said, who forgot her homework. I waited, not interrupting, not rushing. And, I asked softly, she was scared, Emma continued. She thought the teacher would be angry. Her voice was calm, but more present than before. What happened? I asked. Emma looked up slightly. The teacher didn't get angry, she said. She just asked her why. A small pause, and the girl started crying. Something shifted in the room. It was a small story, a simple moment, but it felt real. How did you feel when you saw that? I asked gently. Emma blinked, as if the question surprised her. I don't know, she said at first. Then she paused again. And this time, she didn't stop thinking. I think, she began, then looked up at me. I felt bad for her. That was it. A feeling, small, honest. And suddenly, the silence didn't feel so empty anymore. That makes sense, I said softly. My husband nodded too. Yes, he added. That sounds difficult for her. Emma glanced at him, just for a moment, then back at the table. But I noticed it. That small connection, that small acknowledgement, it mattered. We stayed there, in that conversation, a little longer than usual, and something gentle began to grow. Not excitement, not energy, but comfort. Can I ask something? My husband said after a while. Emma looked up again. Of course, she said quietly. When you said you felt bad for her, he continued, did it remind you of anything? She thought for a moment. then nodded slightly. Sometimes I feel like that, she said. The words were soft, but clear. When? I asked. She hesitated, then answered slowly. When I forget something? I felt a small tension in my chest. Like homework? I asked. She nodded. Yes. And what do you feel? I continued gently. She looked down again. Like I did something wrong, she said. A pause. And like someone will be disappointed. That word again. Disappointed. It stayed in the air, heavier than before. Because now, it was not just a thought. It was something she carried. Every day. I glanced at my husband. He looked thoughtful, quiet. I don't want you to feel that way, I said softly. She didn't respond immediately. And then she said something that made me stop completely. But I do. There was no blame in her voice, no accusation, just truth. And suddenly, I understood something clearly. This silence at our table that was not about a lack of words. It was about a lack of safety. She was not sharing because she wasn't sure how it would be received, not because we were unkind, but because we were distant, too focused, too busy, too used to quick answers, and not enough real listening. I took a slow breath and decided to change something again. Emma, I said gently, you don't have to be perfect here. She looked at me, a little confused. This table, I continued, is not for being perfect. I paused, then added softly, it's for being honest. The words felt simple, but important. She didn't reply right away, but I saw something shift again, a small release, not complete, not instant, but real. My husband leaned forward slightly. I think we forgot that too, he said quietly. I looked at him. He continued, I think we turned dinner into something automatic, routine, habit. Eat, finish, move on, he added. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said, and we forgot to stay. Stay. That word felt important because being physically present is not the same as truly being there. Emma looked between us, listening, watching. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't seem distant. She seemed curious. What should we do then? She asked. And a simple question, but full of possibility. I smiled slightly. We can start small, I said. Just one story each. They both looked at me. One story, my husband repeated. Yes, I said. Something real, something from the day. I paused. It doesn't have to be big, just honest. There was a moment of silence again, but this time, it felt different. Not empty, not distant, but open. My husband nodded first. Okay, he said. Then he looked at Emma. Do you want to go first? Or should I? He asked. She thought for a moment, then gave a small smile. You can go, she said. And just like that, something began. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but genuinely. A quiet dinner was slowly becoming something else. Something warmer, something alive. And for the first time in a long time, we were not just sitting together. We were starting to return to each other. My husband cleared his throat softly, not because he was nervous, but because he wasn't used to this. Sharing like this felt unfamiliar. I don't have a big story, he said quietly. That's okay, I replied. It doesn't have to be big. He nodded, thinking for a moment. Today at work, he began slowly, I made a small mistake. Emma looked up, interested. What kind of mistake? She asked. He smiled slightly, a little embarrassed. I sent the wrong file to a client, he said. That doesn't sound too bad, Emma said. He nodded. It wasn't serious, he admitted. But I felt uncomfortable. There was a pause. Why? She asked. He looked at her, then answered honestly. Because I don't like making mistakes, he said. Emma tilted her head slightly. Does anyone like making mistakes? She asked. He laughed softly. No, he said. I don't think so. Another small pause. But sometimes, he added, I think I'm harder on myself than I need to be. That sentence felt familiar. I glanced at Emma. She was listening carefully, quietly. I stayed at my desk longer than I needed to, he continued, checking everything again. He looked down at his hands, even after I fixed it. Emma didn't speak right away. She was thinking. Then she asked something simple, but important. Did anyone get upset? She asked. He shook his head. No, he said. They understood. Then why did you feel bad? She asked. He paused, then smiled slightly. I guess I didn't want to disappoint anyone, he said. There it was again, that word, disappoint. It moved quietly through our conversation, connecting us in ways we hadn't seen before. Emma looked at him, then said something softly. I feel like that too. The room became still again, but this time it felt warm, not heavy, not distant, just real. My husband nodded slowly. I think a lot of people feel that way, he said. He looked at her more gently now. But it doesn't mean we have to carry it all the time. Emma didn't answer immediately, but she didn't look away either. She stayed in the moment, and present, and I realized something quietly. This was what we had been missing. Not perfect conversations, not exciting stories, just honesty. Simple, human. I think it's my turn, I said softly. They both looked at me, waiting. I took a small breath, not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to be honest too. Today, I began. I didn't do anything special. Emma smiled slightly. That's okay, she said. I smiled back. Yes, I said. I think it is. I paused for a moment, then continued. But I did notice something. They both listened. I realized that I've been rushing a lot, I said. My husband nodded slightly. I moved from one task to another, I continued, without really stopping. Emma watched me closely. And I think, I added, I stopped noticing small things. There was a quiet pause. What kind of small things? She asked. I thought for a moment, then smiled softly. Like the way the light comes through the window in the morning, I said. She blinked, a little surprised. Or the sound of the house when it's quiet, I added. Another pause. And moments like this, I said, looking at both of them. The table, the food, the conversation, simple things, but meaningful. Emma looked around the table slowly, as if she was seeing it in a new way. I never thought about that, she said quietly. That's okay, I replied. I didn't either, until recently. My husband leaned back slightly. I think we all got used to moving too fast, he said. I nodded. Yes, I said, and maybe we forgot to slow down. Emma rested her chin on her hand, thinking. Is that why dinner felt so quiet before? She asked. I looked at her. Yes, I said gently. Not because we had nothing to say. I paused. But because we weren't really here. She nodded slowly. That idea seemed to settle inside her. I think I understand, she said, and I believed her. Not completely, not fully, but enough. Enough to begin. We stayed at the table longer that night, not forcing conversation, not filling every silence, but allowing space for something natural to grow. Sometimes we spoke, sometimes we didn't, but even the quiet moments felt different now. They felt shared. After dinner, Emma didn't leave immediately. She stayed at the table, tracing small circles on the surface with her finger. Can we do this again tomorrow? She asked softly. My heart felt a small warmth. Of course, I said. She nodded, then stood up slowly, carrying her plate to the kitchen, not in a rush, not distracted, just present. My husband looked at me, a quiet understanding between us. This feels different, he said. Yes, I replied. It does. We didn't say much more. 'Cause we didn't need to. Something had already been said, without words. That night, as I prepared for bed, I thought about everything that had happened. Nothing dramatic, no big change, no sudden transformation. Just a conversation, a few honest moments, a little more attention, and yet it felt like something important had shifted, not outside, but inside our home, inside our habits, inside the way we saw each other. The next evening would come, and the one after that. Life would continue, busy, full. But now, there was something new at our table. Not perfect, not complete, but real. A beginning. And sometimes, that's all we need. A quiet beginning that slowly brings us back to the people sitting right in front of us. The next evening came quietly, like any other day. The sun slowly disappeared behind the buildings. The air softened. The house returned to its familiar rhythm. Nothing looked different. And yet, something had already changed. I stood in the kitchen, preparing dinner, cutting vegetables, listening to the soft sounds around me, the gentle movement of time. But inside, I was more aware, more present. I wasn't just preparing food anymore, I was preparing a moment, a space, a chance to continue what we had started. Footsteps approached. My husband walked in first, loosening his tie slightly, letting out a quiet breath. Smells good, he said. I smiled. Thank you, I replied. He didn't go to the living room like usual. He didn't reach for his phone. Instead, he stayed, leaning lightly against the counter, watching, not saying much, but being there. And somehow, that felt important. A few minutes later, Emma walked in, her backpack resting on one shoulder. She paused at the doorway, looking at us as if she was noticing something new. Hi, she said softly. Hi, we both replied. She stepped inside slowly, putting her bag down, not rushing away, not disappearing into her room, just staying. How was your day? I asked gently. She thought for a moment, then answered, it was okay. A simple answer, but not closed, not final, just a beginning. Anything you want to share? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded slightly. Maybe later, she said. I smiled. Of course, I replied. No pressure, no expectation, just space. We moved to the table together, not in silence, but in a quiet understanding. The plates were placed, the food was ready. We sat down, and for a brief moment, everything paused. Not awkward, not empty, just still, like we were all aware that this moment mattered. Let's begin, my husband said softly. We started eating, slowly, without rushing, and something interesting happened. The silence returned, but it didn't feel the same. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't distant. It was comfortable, like a shared breath, like a space where words could arrive naturally. After a few minutes, Emma looked up. I remembered something, she said. We both turned to her, listening. Today in class, she began, we had to work in pairs. I nodded gently. And, I asked, she continued, I was with someone I don't usually talk to. Her voice was calm, but thoughtful. At first, it felt strange, she said. A small pause. But then we started talking. What did you talk about? My husband asked. Emma smiled slightly. Nothing important, she said. Just small things. I smiled too. Sometimes small things are important, I said. She looked at me, as if considering that idea. Yeah, she said quietly. I think so. Another pause, but this one felt alive. She told me she feels nervous when speaking in front of the class, Emma added. I leaned forward slightly. And what did you say? I asked. Emma looked down for a moment, then answered honestly. I told her I feel the same. A gentle silence followed. Not empty, not heavy, just understanding. How did that feel? My husband asked. Emma thought for a second, then said, better. A simple word, but meaningful, because something had been shared, something real, and it had made a difference. I think that's brave, I said softly. She looked at me, a little surprised. Really? She asked. I nodded. Yes, I said. It's not always easy to say how we feel. She considered that, then gave a small nod. I didn't think about it like that, she said. My husband smiled gently. Sometimes we don't notice our own courage, he said. Emma looked at him, listening, and I could see it, that quiet connection growing stronger, not through big moments, but through small, honest ones. We continued eating, but now there was more life at the table, more presence, more awareness. After a while, my husband spoke again. I have something to share too, he said. Emma looked at him, curious. Today I left work a little earlier, he said. That's unusual, I said softly. He nodded. Yes, he replied. I realized I didn't need to stay late. A pause. I just thought I had to? Emma tilted her head slightly. Why? She asked. He smiled faintly. Habit, I guess, he said. Or maybe pressure. He looked at her. Sometimes we create rules for ourselves that no one else asked for. Emma blinked, thinking. That sounds tiring, she said. He laughed quietly. Yes, he said. It can be. Another pause. But today, he continued, I decided to come home instead. He looked around the table, at both of us. And I'm glad I did. The words were simple, but they stayed in the air, warm and steady. Emma smiled. A real smile, not big, not loud, but genuine. Me too, she said. And just like that, something settled inside the room. A feeling of togetherness, not forced, not perfect, but real. We finished dinner slowly. No one rushed to leave. No one reached for distractions. We stayed a little longer, talking, pausing, being, and in those quiet moments, I realized something deeply important. Connection doesn't come from big changes. It comes from attention, from choosing again and again to be present, to listen, to stay. That night, after everything was done, I sat alone for a moment. The house was quiet again, but not in the old way. This quiet felt full, full of something gentle, something growing. And I understood that what we had started was not just about dinner. It was about something deeper, a new way of being together, a new rhythm, slow, intentional, alive. And even though it was still small, I knew it would continue. Because now we were finally paying attention, not just to our lives, but to each other. The change did not announce itself. It did not arrive with noise or excitement or a clear beginning and end. It moved quietly through our days, through our habits, through the small spaces we had once ignored. At first, I thought it would fade, like many good intentions do. A few meaningful dinners, then back to routine, back to quick meals, short answers, distant silence. But something was different this time. We had seen it, felt it, and once you truly feel something, it becomes harder to forget. The dinners continued, not perfectly, not every night full of conversation, but consistently more present. Some evenings were still quiet, but the silence no longer felt empty. It felt shared, comfortable, like we were resting in the same space, instead of escaping into separate ones. One night, a few weeks later, I noticed something small, but important. I didn't call them to the table. I didn't need to. Emma came first, walking into the kitchen slowly. "Is it time?" she asked. I smiled. "Almost," I said. She nodded and stayed, not going back to her room, not reaching for anything else, just waiting. A few minutes later, my husband joined us, loosening his shoulders slightly, breathing out the weight of the day. "Smells good," he said again. But this time, he didn't just say it and move on. He looked at the food, at the table, at us. And I could see it. He was here, fully. We sat down together. And without planning it, without discussing it, something natural happened. Emma spoke first. "I have a story today," she said. I looked at her, gently surprised. "A story?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes," she said. We waited, giving her space. "I had to present something in class," she began. Her voice was calm, but I could hear something underneath. Nervousness, memory. "I was scared at first," she said. A small pause. "But I remembered what we talked about." I leaned forward slightly. "What did you remember?" I asked softly. She looked at me. "That it's okay to feel something," she said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. "And?" my husband asked gently. I still felt nervous, she continued, but I didn't try to hide it. Another pause. "I just spoke anyway." Silence filled the room again, but this silence was full, not empty, full of understanding, full of pride. "How did it go?" I asked. She smiled, a real smile. "Not perfect," she said, "but good." I nodded slowly. "That sounds like success to me," I said. She looked at me, and this time, she didn't question it. She accepted it. Because now, success had a different meaning. Not perfection, not control, but courage, presence, honesty. "I think so too," she said quietly. My husband leaned forward slightly. "I'm proud of you," he said. The words were simple, but this time, they landed differently. Emma didn't look down. She didn't avoid them. She held them, received them. "Thank you," she said, and I could see it clearly now. She believed it, not because we said it, but because she felt it herself. That night, after dinner, we stayed at the table again, not because we had to, but because we wanted to, talking a little, laughing softly, sharing small things. And I realized something that felt both simple and profound. This table had become more than a place to eat. It had become a place to return, to slow down, to reconnect, to remember who we are when we are truly together. Later that evening, as I cleaned the kitchen, Emma came back quietly. She stood beside me, not saying anything at first, just being there. "Mom?" she said softly. "Yes," I replied. "I like dinner now," she said. I paused, turning to look at her. "Why?" I asked gently. She thought for a moment, then answered in the simplest way possible. "Because it doesn't feel quiet anymore." I smiled, a soft, quiet smile. "I'm glad," I said. She nodded, and then added something that stayed with me, long after that moment. "It feels like we're really here, not just sitting, not just eating, but present, connected, alive in the same space. After she went to her room, I stood there for a while, thinking, not about what we had fixed, but about what we had found, because nothing in our life had changed dramatically. We still had work, school, responsibilities, busy days, tired evenings, but now we had something else too, something we had almost lost: attention, care, time that was not rushed, but shared, and slowly, I began to understand something important. Families don't lose connection all at once. They lose it quietly, in small moments, in short answers, in times when no one really listens. And in the same way, they find it again, not through big changes, but through small ones, through questions, through pauses, through choosing to stay just a little longer. That quiet dinner, the one that once felt empty, had changed everything, not because we forced it to, but because we finally noticed it. And once we noticed, we chose differently. We listened, we shared, we slowed down. And in doing so, we found each other again. Thank you for being here, for listening, for taking this quiet moment with us. If this story made you pause, even just for a second, then it has already done something meaningful. And if you want to continue learning English in a calm, slow, and thoughtful way, through stories that help you feel as well as understand, then stay with us, because sometimes the simplest stories are the ones that change us the most.